Brooklyn Nets fans, it has been a long 6 months, but tonight the Nets tip their 2025-2026 season off in Charlotte, and we are joined by a very special guest to break down what tonight looks like, what the entire season looks like for these Brooklyn Nets. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Brooklyn Boys Show. I am your host, Josh Woolever, a couple subscribers short of 500, so hit like and hit subscribe to promote the development of this show. You guys are the best, as always, streaming to you live each and every day. It's Charlotte tonight, Nets opener, joined by, you know him as Nets Insider on Twitter and X, Mr. Rick Laughland. Thank you so much for joining us, Rick.
It's great to be with you, Josh, and we need some new, more optimistic voices on Twitter and X and all these platforms, and I think you're the perfect guy for that. So happy to be on, and hope we can get you to 500 subscribers by the end of the show.
Absolutely. Would mean a ton. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Should be a great episode. Where I want to start here today is this Nets season, they're not going to win a lot of games. The outlook is shaky. We talked about this on a couple shows ago. This Nets team, the outlook has to be positive and probably focused on the young guys and the development of these rookies. But look, Rick, there's a lot of Nets fans that are probably not going to watch many games this year because they're just scared of what the product on the court's going to look like.
You said the key word, Josh. And as Steve Ballmer, this is pre the aspiration allegations with Kawhi Leonard and everything that just went down over the last few months. But Steve Ballmer once said, developers, and the Nets want development out of this roster. So if you're a Twitter expert and NBA armchair quarterback per se, and you're just box score watching and you're surfing and following the NBA on Peacock and watching the Knicks and all the out-of-market games, you're missing out on what this crop of rookies, the 5 first-round draft picks, unprecedented, by the way, how they're going to develop. Are they going to be key pieces on this team moving forward? And not being a Sean Marks apologist, because he certainly had his missteps. They fumbled as far as having 3 superstars here. There was a lot of blame to go around with that superstar era coming to a premature ending. But as far as I'm concerned, if the Nets are able to hit on, dare I say, 1 or even 2 or 3 of these first-round draft picks that are starting caliber players, or at worst-case scenario, rotational pieces for this team for the next 5+ years, those to me are building blocks. That's a win, and that should be reason enough as a Net fan to pay close attention to how these young guys develop.
Yeah, I think Sean Marks certainly is on the hot seat, whether it was fumbling the ending of that Big 3 situation that you mentioned and completely giving up hope, whether it was, a couple picks here and there that certainly have not panned out for him, a couple of bad contracts and bad trades that have gotten the Nets to be in the spot where they are today, kind of in desperate need of some of your 5 rookies to pan out. I think what their mindset was heading in was, look, we have this many assets. It's never been done in NBA history, but this franchise needs a complete turnaround. And what's the best way to do that? What's the best way to find that guy moving forward and maybe a couple of pieces to support him in that process? It's to take as many picks as possible. So in a record-setting 5 first-round pick year, the Nets go for quantity over quality. They don't trade back up into the lottery, and it should be extremely interesting not only to see what the time management looks like, to see who's up in Brooklyn for a while. I'm sure guys like Saraf and Wolf will spend a lot of time on Long Island, and I think that is absolutely a key to their development.
And for me, one of the key lessons learned, I think, from Sean Marks' failed Big 3 era is that when you bring assets from outside the organization in and they don't grow up in the Brooklyn Nets culture and you don't develop them and they don't have continuity in a coaching staff, then they're not going to be loyal. They're not going to sign contract extensions. You're not going to see them grow and develop. Whereas the Nets basically went big game hunting. They were able to lure Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant here, that therein led to James Harden. It's one way of team building. But now with the CBA, of course, with all the punitive measures that have been put in now by the double whammy, so to speak, as far as the taxation is concerned and the luxury ramifications, luxury tax, Now it's building through the draft. It's making basically quantity over not necessarily quality, but superstar quality. And we've seen that in the Indiana Pacers, where they can go from guys 1 to 9. They can run 4 or 5 guys off the bench that are going to come in. And if you're not ready, they'll run you out of the gym. And I see what the vision, the long-term vision of what Sean Marks is trying to build. Am I going to get ahead of myself? Am I going to see Nolan Traore is Tony Parker and Ben Sharaf is Manu Ginobili? No, not yet. But that international flavor, that leaving no stone unturned and trying to develop from within, as opposed to building a culture and recruiting people into it, I think it's the way to do it. It's the most organic. And as I mentioned, with the new CBA, it's the way the league wants to move, because there's so much superstar movement, which is good for the league. Some of it's bad, but they want to see guys develop and grow and be with an organization 3, 4, 5 years and sign beyond just a rookie extension.
I mean, it's crazy to think this was the first Nets lottery pick in 15 years. Last time they picked in the lottery before Yegor Gelman was selected in June was in New Jersey. So this franchise has gone a long, long time without having that guy that they want to focus on and develop. They failed the Kevin Garnett era. They failed the Kevin Durant era. Now it's time to turn to the young guys who are still in their teenage years, who have not hit the 20-year-old mark, and say, well, you guys are the future of this franchise. It's going to be on you guys likely to turn this thing around. And I think you're right, Rick, in saying that this franchise needs to focus on what's happening here. There's a lot of talk about, star watching next offseason, because the Nets don't own their own 2027 pick outside of this year's lottery. So that'll be something they do not have the swap rights to. That'll be interesting to monitor. But I think where you have to be living right now is this season is all about getting the highest lottery pick possible. And then at the end of the day, I'm not focused on going out there, getting a Trae Young, getting a Giannis Antetokounmpo. I would rather watch the development from inside the building, keep the picks flowing. Yes, Sean Marks is on the hot seat, and he's got, dare I say, two more years of drafting to turn, his persona around in front of the Nets fan base before he is likely, have people truly calling for his job. But in the midst of a rebuild, it's going to be hard to do that. You gotta continue to grow this thing from within and not focus on the stars outside, because the Nets had the most cap space coming into this offseason, Rick, and I think it was really wise for them to steer clear of that ship and sort of head in the direction of the younger guys.
And Josh, I find it amusing when I log on to Twitter and X and I see people basically burying the Nets already, and these draft picks are a waste and they're not going to pan out, many of which are 19 years of age, teenagers. That might be old to you, Josh, but for me, there's so much room for improvement and development. And a guy like Jordi Fernandez, the perfect type of coach. The success of the season is not going to be measured in wins or losses. I know that Nets fans and the large majority of them have one eye on the NBA draft lottery and getting a top 3 pick and another eye on development, and that's perfectly fine. But just like when you play basketball the right way and you team build the right way, the wins will come. Well, when you develop the right way and you're, like you had alluded to, bringing guys up from the G League, Drake Powell and Danny Wolf, and, getting guys opportunities to prove their worth, basically, and seeing as an evaluation process where they fit the pieces to the puzzle, the losses will follow. So I don't think that's really the worry. I think ultimately for me, it's going to be Yegor Yeoman, who I eventually, probably after 82 games, will figure out how to pronounce his name. Not there yet, but how he develops, I think he has the most, as the number 8 overall pick, has the most pressure on him. The player that I'm the most high on is Ben Sharaf. I see the court vision is incredible. The size, the stature, the frame, the strength. I mean, if you just look at his physique and his build, I mean, he looks like a 4th-year NBA player, and he's had professional experience playing over in Israel. So he, to me, alongside Danny Wolf, could be instant impact players as rookies. I think that Yeoman is more of a developmental player, that he's going to have to get stronger. He's going to have to get in the weight room. When he faces on-ball pressure, we saw that earlier in the preseason. He was coughing the ball up, or he was really getting knocked off his feet. So that's the next step for him. And Traore, first step, great, got a great burst, can get to the rim. He's going to have to work on his jump shot and for those defenders to respect his perimeter game. But again, it's all a learning process. You have a patient coach in Jordi Fernandez, but you have a competitive coach. This is, even though you're not chasing wins, right? This is not going to be a culture that's going to accept losing. I expect this Nets team to be fighting to the final buzzer, whether that's game 1 tonight or whether that's game 82. I know that's going to upset a lot of Nets fans, but that's the reality of it. Now, like I said, the losses will follow depending on what lineups they put out there, but those guys are going to be competing at 110%. That's what I'm confident in under Jordi Fernandez.
Tell me a little bit more about what you said about Ben Soroff. I think there's a lot of Nets fans out there that would not agree with what you just said, that think, he's not an NBA-ready guy, that, maybe he does need 50, 60 games down on Long Island. And as a 19-year-old, you kind of saw it a little bit in the first preseason game. Got into early foul trouble, but I think you're right in terms of the court vision, the passing ability. That's there. Why do you think he has what it takes to play at a high caliber NBA level already?
And yeah, I'll preface this by saying defensively, yeah, of course, he's not exactly a cone on defense. He's not how Cam Thomas was 2 years ago or even last year. Still area for improvement. What I see is that the Jason Kidd, the basically ability to see the floor develop. He sees things before they actually happen. And that anticipation is something that is very difficult to teach, that maybe as you get into your third, fourth, and fifth year in the NBA and you do film study and you get great coaching and you have playing experience, but that innate sense of playmaking that he just has at age of 19 can't be taught, and that has to be something that has to be valued. And I think this coaching staff sees it. And ultimately, again, I think Yeoman is going to it's going to be an up and down season for him. The question started about his 3-point shooting. Well, he answered that in the preseason, but is the ball handling going to be there? Is the defense? So I think that Soroff is the most well-rounded. He could play in any type of game or system because, as I mentioned, he's going to read the floor in the open court. In the half-court sets, I think he can see the reads and develop. And you have on one wing and one side Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas on the other, two more than willing ball scorers that are probably they're gonna have a jump ball to see who takes the ball to shoot it. That's a luxury that any rookie point guard and playmaker wants to have. So again, I know and I understand that Nets fans, show me, don't tell me about Ben Soroff. But I'm telling you, from what I've seen on film, I've watched him going back to his pro-Israeli days, and then now this small sample size in the preseason. He looks fearless. He looks like he can get to the rim. Is he the most explosive player and the best athlete? No, but he has that kind of offbeat type of game like an SGA or a Luka that is always keeping his defenders off balance. And you never know until the last minute whether he's going to pull up and take a mid-range shot or he's going to swing the ball out to the corner for an open three. So that unpredictability and ability to make a play from any point on the floor, I think is what's going to make him ultimately a special player.
Smash the like, hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Joined by Rick, Nets Insider on Twitter. Rick, I started reading this book right here not too long ago. A History of the Nets from Teaneck to Brooklyn. An amazing book. Tell the audience a little bit about it while we got you here. Highly recommend. It has taught me a lot as a young Nets fan. I learned a lot that I did not know, and I'm excited to round it out within the coming weeks here.
And I'm not even sure where to begin, Josh, but I guess I'll start in the Nets have played in more home arenas than any professional team in North American sports, 8 different arenas. When you think of the New Jersey Nets at the time and now the Brooklyn Nets, and before that, the New York Nets, when you thought about them, you didn't realize they've been around since 1967. They started, as the book alludes to, in Teaneck, New Jersey, at the Teaneck Armory. Their longtime scorekeeper who kept score from that first ever game at the Teaneck Armory, he was just doing a favor for the coach at the time, Max Leslowski, and he kept that game, and he went all the way through basically when the book got published until April of 21, and unfortunately passed away. So for him to have that continuity, that entire history of the team, starting as basically an upstart ABA franchise to what it is now, $1 billion multi-international type of team, it's really incredible, and it's a unique story. And the Nets, I feel like the Nets, this current regime, and I'll be critical, but the front office and even the ownership group and their public relations department, they tend to sometimes run from their history instead of embracing it, because the Nets have had embarrassing moments in their history? Absolutely. Have they had more than a few losing seasons? Sure. it's still their history. You can't escape it. You can't run from it. They're doing a better job of bringing back alumni from the New Jersey Nets days and the New York Nets days. Still area for improvement, like Ben Surhoff and Yegor Yeoman and on and on and on. But I wanted to connect because when, Josh, I was probably your age and even younger, going to Continental Airlines Arena at the time, Brendan Byrne before that, watching the New Jersey Nets and looking up and seeing Dr. Julius Erving's number and saying, boy, what Dr. J played here. There was nobody ever had explained the history of the team. And so I didn't know the connection when I was young between the New York Nets and the New Jersey Nets. And now you have a whole generation of Brooklyn Nets fans that don't even know them, that they played in New Jersey and New Jersey Nets. Yeah. So basically it's connecting that whole history from 1967 as the New Jersey Americans to the New York Nets to the New Jersey Nets and eventually now Brooklyn Nets. So like I said, even as a non-Nets fan, even if you're a Knicks fan or you're just a general NBA fan or you like sports history, it's got something in there for everybody because it's a very unique story.
Absolutely, Rick. It's a great story. It's even better written. And I think this cover should tell you more than you need to know between Dr. J, Jason Kidd, Drazen Petrovic, some absolute all-time legends on that front cover, and I do highly recommend it. So, Rick, we appreciate you coming on, and we appreciate you telling us a little bit about the book. You can order it online, which is where I got mine. You guys are the best. Hit like, hit subscribe as we continue to break down everything you need to know. It's opening night for the Brooklyn Nets. The tip-off is 7 p.m. in Charlotte. They play the Hornets down there at the Spectrum Center, and then they come back Friday for the home opener where Connor and I will be. Rick, where I kind of want to go with this discussion is this season specifically, on a night-by-night basis, you said fight until the final buzzer earlier in the show, and I think that is a big mentality of Jordi Fernandez. I want to get into the head coach of the Nets in a little bit, but night-by-night basis, what does this team look like? Because no doubt the coaching staff is going to want them to win.
And when I look at it and you look at analytics from preseason, that's a dangerous game, right? But they finished as one of the top three-point shooting teams during the preseason period. I expect that to carry over between the spacing ability of Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr., Yegor Yeoman showing improvement in that area. They have the ability, even Noah Clowney, the guy is more effective from beyond the three-point line than he is anywhere inside the paint, which to me, it's, I guess, a good problem to have for a guy that's nearly 7 feet, but I'd like to see him get down into the paint and get his nose dirty and put his shoulder into somebody and get to the basket and the free throw line. But I expect this Nets to have as high as a top 7 to 8 offense in the league. I really think that could be that prolific with the playmakers you mentioned with Surhoff and with Yeoman and Danny Wolf, as unusual. It reminds you of Alfred Sengun if you watched last night's game with Kevin Durant calling timeout and Zach Zarba, the ref, not giving it to him. He could have been a Chris Webber moment all over again. He got away with that in overtime, right? Yes. And but it reminds you of Sengun when he's bringing the ball up, and it's this two-man game between Durant handling the ball, which was a nightmare in the playoffs 3 years ago against Boston the first round. So I think Ime Udoka, who was the coach of Boston at that time, knew that Kevin Durant's not the primary ball handler. So you have a big in Sengun doing a lot of the ball handling, facilitating the offense from the free throw line extended. That can be Danny Wolf. And I think that versatility, that Swiss Army knife ability that he has is just going to open up so much for the Nets scorers, because what I think Jordi Fernandez wants to move away from, and why the Nets really were reticent to even extend Cam Thomas, accepted the qualifying offer, they couldn't bridge the gap in contract negotiations, is that Cam Thomas defensively leaves a lot to be desired, but also the ball tends to stick when it goes to Cam. And yes, can he score the ball? Absolutely. If he has 20 plus shots, is he going to score 30 plus points? Sure. But I think Jordi Fernandez knows the ball has to hop around. Even if Cam Thomas is scoring at a high clip, it's the efficiency, it's the ability to get the ball in the basket, in 7 seconds or less, like Mike D'Antoni used to do back in the day. So I think that he's trying to have Cam Thomas to adjust to that fast pace, either take a lane, take a shot, or give it up to the next guy kind of mentality. So if they follow that blueprint that Jordi Fernandez has put forth, I think this is going to be not just a good offense or better than average offense. I think very good offense. The questions are going to come defensively. Cam Thomas on the floor, Ben Surhoff, I mentioned his defensive deficiencies. Yegor Yeoman is not exactly a defensive stopper. And Nick Claxton, who used to be a deterrent at the rim that would turn away shots and just intimidate shots with his presence, has not been that blocking force that he's been in past years. So I think defensively, they're probably going to be a bottom third team just by virtue of the offensive pace they're going to play at. And offensively, they're going to be a top 8 offense in the NBA.
I think that you are a little too high on this team. Where I stand is I agree they have the scores, and Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. There is going to be no shortage of 3-point attempts. And I say this on opening night knowing full well we could see, a combined, 40, 50 points from the two of them tonight and many nights throughout the season, but it does scare me a little bit knowing that takes away from a couple roles that some other younger guys who may be your post rebuild will take away from them. Now, I think Jordi Fernandez coaches this team as well as he can to win basketball games each and every night. But Rick, where we kind of differ here is you talked about Trey Seraf and Gioman. I just think the inexperience at the NBA level in terms of the ball handlers is just going to lead to high turnover ratios. It's going to lead to a little bit of inexperience, and that's going to be a very deep team. You saw how seriously they were taking the roster management. It's because there's going to be a role for every guy on this roster, two-way guys included. So I think this Nets team is going to be very deep. At the same time, that means you're talking about, it's not just like the Knicks where they ran out 7 guys in the playoffs. Everyone knew everyone. They knew how to play together. The coach knew how to combine their skills to call up the right schemes on both ends of the floor. I think where the Nets may have a little bit of trouble is sort of, interlocking with each other and becoming this one cohesive unit. When you have this many young guys, you'll get a chance to develop them. You'll see them later on in their careers, hopefully take that next step. But in so many rookie seasons and, in a lot of guys that might not come together so well, especially at the start of the season, it's hard for me to see this team, as a top 8 offense, like you mentioned.
And it's a point well taken. In the preseason, they led all teams in turnovers. And I think Jordi Fernandez is going to try to distinguish between aggressive plays that lead to turnovers and plays that are going to lead to runouts the other way and, game-changing plays. So I understand what you're saying about the connectivity of this team, the inexperience, the fact that you have guys that are unfamiliar with, where to get a guy a ball in a certain spot, or maybe still even learning the system. But where I get this, if you want to call it cockeyed optimism, I'm okay with that, is that I really think that the scoring onus is going to be on Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Thomas. You have rookies like Yeoman, even if he's averaging 8 points a game, 9 points a game, it's going to be all the other intangible areas. Can he keep the turnovers down? Can he get a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio? Can he get involved in the rebounding game? Can he help set the pace and push the ball in the secondary break? It's all those intangible things that you're not going to, if you're a Twitter box score watcher, you're going to say, oh boy, the Nets lost tonight by 5 to the Hornets, and Yeoman only had 9 points, but 12 assists and 4 turnovers. That to me is going to be enough for this Nets team to be a top 8 offense, because I just think that's how dynamic they could be. Is it going to happen right away? I don't think so. I think that there's going to be growing pains. I think there's going to be games where you're going to look up and it's going to be 20 plus turnovers, and Jordi Fernandez is going to be pulling whatever, maybe he has 1 hair left on his head out. But by the end of the season, I really do think that you're going to look and those offensive rankings as far as pace is concerned, offensive scoring output, and the Nets are going to be right near the top 10, around that 8 to 10 spot by the end of the year. I really do feel that. But again, all bets are off. We have to see what the second half brings. There's a lot of, twists and turns. Like I've learned writing the history of the Nets book, okay? There's a lot of turns where this franchise has moved, how many players they've traded. Are they going to try to offload a guy, like Michael Porter Jr.? Are they going to cut him? There's so many different permutations of what could happen here. So operating under the pretenses that the team that starts the year finishes the year and they're relatively healthy and nobody's traded or no sort of injuries happen, that's how I see things panning out offensively. Defensively is a different story because, like we talked about, if they're turning the ball over at an alarming clip, that's going to lead to points on the other end, and they're not, they're going to have to play collective team defense. The other thing I'm seeing defensively, which leaks over too, they are not a good rebounding team. Noah Clowney is spending way too much time on the outside. And Nick Claxton, his rebounding numbers have precipitously fallen the last few years. So that's where I think they're going to struggle.
And I think a guy like Daron Sharp needs to step up into that role. Rebounding is such a big part that is extremely overlooked. You look at, assists, shots, and rebounds is sort of the one part of the triple-double that gets, left behind. Daron Sharp was an extremely efficient rebounder last year. I really want him to see, a big amount of progress, him jumping into, maybe even competing for the starting center role by the time this season comes and goes. But I think it should be extremely interesting. The Nets have such a quirky roster where, you can see Yegor Jones at the 3 and Noah Clowney also at the 3 on the same night at some point. And you can see a point where Terrence Mann's the tallest guy on the court. You really have no clue what to expect. There's, not a ton of how would I say this, classical style of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a lot of fluidity in terms of the Nets could have 3 guys at 6, 10 and above on the floor at once. They could have their tallest guy at 6'9" on the floor at once. So that's where I'm at for the Nets. In the final couple minutes here before we let you go, Rick, I just wanted to get a quick preview of tonight's opening night matchup against the Hornets. Hornets are another interesting team. They just drafted Con Knipple with their top 5 lottery pick. What do you see out of this game specifically? Extremely interesting stuff when the Nets played the Hornets last year. I don't know if you remember this, but the Nets were winning and LaMelo Ball got benched for a majority of the fourth quarter because he was shot chucking and making it all about himself. But so Nets and Hornets have had some interesting twists, but ultimately these are going to be 2 teams probably looking for another lottery pick.
Yeah, and the Hornets are always interesting, right? They're the perennial lottery-bound team, but, LaMelo is an intriguing player. He has to, grow and mature a bit. I do remember that game from last year. Hopefully that was a learning lesson for him. He's backed up by Trey Mann, right? You have Brandon Miller, dangerous scorer. Talk about a guy that's a Swiss Army knife, dangerous, tall. When you're talking about, just to get back to the Nets for a minute, when you're talking about that versatility, anybody can play the 3, anybody can play the 4. That's today's NBA, right? Positionless basketball. That's why I think Michael Porter Jr. can be a guy that can get in that paint and rebound better than you would realize. He's every bit 6'8", 6'9". So there'll be nights where he'll be asked to guard the 4. Even if they went total small ball, I could see him maybe at the 5, not for extended minutes, but in an emergency situation, somebody's injured or something. But I've been a big Day'Ron Sharpe fan for a long time, and I think that his minutes, he's impactful. It's not measured in the box score. It's the hustle plays. It's the tenacity, and he's got some defensive toughness that, let's face it, and no other way to put it, Nick Claxton's a little light in the backside to really compete with Nikola Jokic and, Joel Embiid.
Giannis.
Whereas, Giannis, I mean, go down the list, right? Any of the big-bodied centers, even a Jakob Poeltl from last night. So Day'Ron is not a guy that you're going to move. You're going to have to move mountains to move him around. So I think he can be impactful on the defensive side of the ball. As far as what I expect from this game tonight, think it's going to be high scoring. I don't see a heck of a lot of defense. I'm excited to see Contention as well because I think that ultimately, is he like the JJ Redick type? I think he'd even be more dynamic. I know a lot of people on Nets Twitter were down on him and thought that he was going to be overrated. So ultimately, I could see this game being in the 120s, an absolute shootout, not much defense. And ultimately, again, I think the Nets are going to play to the final whistle. I will not predict them to win because I don't think they will. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a fun, fast-paced game. Lots of points, probably lots of turnovers. So,
yeah, well, inexperience all around. I think the Hornets have a couple big names to look for when you talk about Colin Sexton's, LaMelo Balls. They do also have proven guys that can score, so it makes sense why you're predicting this game to be extremely high scoring. I think the Nets might have some trouble a little bit coming out from the field. They're healthy on the injury front outside of Haywood Highsmith, who we knew for a while now. Unfortunately, he suffered an injury setback, but out of all the rookies and such, after an up and down summer, we learned late that Diomand was dealing with something. Powell only got to play in 2 games. It was a rocky summer to say the least, but to sit here on night 1 and say this team is relatively healthy is a very good thing. I think Jordi Fernandez's philosophy should come into play here tonight because, well, after all, this is going to be a game where the Nets are going to have to grit and grind their way out of here. We have one question here from the chat before we let you go, Rick. Jonathan comes in and says, Clowney is someone that could be part of Brooklyn's future after this season or finish what was a bust of a 2023 class. How important is Clowney's performance tonight?
And again, for me, the next step is he going to be a 3-level scorer? He has all the natural tools and ability. For me, it's the mentality to get down to the paint, not be intimidated by the physical presence of a lot of the centers and the power forwards that we just alluded to in the NBA, and really try to work on developing his strength, his footwork, and post game, because at the college level, you saw some of that, but now he was relegated, and not by the coaching staff's design, by his own design, to just basically be hovering and be a 3-and-D type of player, where he can offer so much more. And the Nets didn't just draft him to be a guy that could just sit in the corner and space the floor. He has to take his game to the next level offensively and as well as defensively. And I think ultimately, again, he's kind of in the same archetype as a Nick Claxton, where the body is very similar. You're hoping them to take the next step. For Claxton, it's to be the outside shooting, and for Noah Clowney, it's the inside presence. So it's almost like if you could combine these two guys and merge them into one player, you have the ultimate four or center. But unfortunately, what I've learned over the course of NBA history and Nets history is you keep hoping and praying that the guy develops that side of his game. And unfortunately, more times than not, that doesn't end up happening. I hope that's not the case with Noah Clowney. I want to see some early signs this year that he is going to develop as a 3-level scorer. But he's going to have to, enough with telling me. You're going to have to show me and show the rest of the Nets world that he can do that.
All right, Mr. Rick Laughland, it has been a pleasure and an honor to have you on. Hit like and hit subscribe if you're new to the channel, want to promote things. Rick's Twitter is right there under his name. It's also in the video description for you to check it out. A History of the Nets, one of the best sports books you will ever read. Rick, thank you so much for coming on. Any final words?
Well, I appreciate that, Josh. Just one quick plug for the book I am working on. It's in development right now, an audio book that's going to take that current version you have to the 2025-26 season. So that should be out at some point. And when you're famous, Josh, and you're at 5 million subs, don't forget about me. Invite me on. Maybe I'll be writing a book on the Nets 2040 championship parade. So,
wow, that would be a dream. Rick, I appreciate the kind words. You're the best. Would love to have you on in the future. Thank you so much. It is Nets opening day, everybody. Tip-off is at 7. Connor and I will be on around 10:30 for the post-game show. For Rick Laughland, I'm Josh Woolever, the host of the Brooklyn Boys Show, saying have a great night, everybody. Tune in at 7. Let's go Nets. Stay safe, everybody.